So the prosecution just filed paperwork today, actually in the form of a letter to the judge, saying that they wanted to simplify the jury instructions per the judge's instructions. And what they're doing is they're streamlining things, that there are charges alleging kidnapping, arson, that's the Kid Cudi case. They are alleging aiding and abetting in sex trafficking. They are slimming that all down so that they're not going to kind of overburden and overwhelm the jury.
They're saying
with
that,
instructions.
Right. They're saying that to the judge, that when you give the jury their instructions, just leave out the attempted kidnapping, leave out attempted arson,
But they're
aiding
saying,
and abetting.
They're saying
leave
there's
it
still
out of
actual kidnapping.
Yes.
Actual arson.
And those things, the counts, the charges still remain. They're just saying there's no reason.
Hello, and welcome to today's exclusive coverage on one of the most talked about trials of the year. In this video, we dive deep into the ongoing legal battle of none other than hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs.
In the jury instructions to tell them about the attempted kidnapping.
And Charles, I'll tell you why. Because
actual
attempted means you failed or didn't go through with it. They're alleging it was gone through with, so why bother calling it an attempt as well?
Right.
His life as we know it is hanging in the balance as prosecutors have just laid out explosive arguments in a trial that has gripped the public's attention. Sex trafficking, racketeering, kidnapping. These are just a few of the allegations against him.
And they're just trying to, because the jury is going to have, there are so many, because there are 4 counts here, and because one of them is a RICO count that has so many underlying alleged crimes, they just want to simplify this so that the jury, when they get their instructions, know.
So legal
what to do.
schmiegel. Legal schmiegel.
The prosecution says they have all the evidence to prove that Diddy used his power and influence to create a criminal enterprise. Today, we uncovered Diddy's darkest secrets as they're being exposed in court. Stay tuned.
Let's talk about what really matters.
Well, hold on. I want to say that I know what you want to get to, and we should, but this also plays into that because this is going to be a very complicated thing for the jury
Super complicated.
to look at. And they are potentially going to be under a bit of a time crunch.
So,
as we break down the key moments from the closing arguments in the trial and the shocking revelations that have left both the public and the jury in disbelief, Sean Combs, known professionally as Diddy, has been a staple of the music industry for decades.
it looks like each side is going to take a day. So tomorrow, Thursday,
closing arguments.
there will be a prosecution's closing argument. Friday, the defense's closing argument. And then the judge is going to give instructions to the jury, which may take...
From his record label Bad Boy Entertainment to his highly successful ventures in fashion, television and spirits, he's built a formidable empire. However, in the last few weeks, his empire has come under attack.
couple hours.
Because of what we just talked about.
So realistically, the jury's going to start deliberating on Monday.
Right.
So you got
they might have an hour or so late on Friday.
Or they may do it, we don't know, they may do it on Friday, depending, they may do it, but the jury's probably going to start deliberating in earnest on Monday.
The charges against Diddy are serious. Federal prosecutors have accused him of running a criminal enterprise that was involved in sex trafficking, racketeering, drug-related activities, and other disturbing crimes.
The reality here, folks, is that if you've talked to your friends, you know, some people say, oh, he's guilty on everything, he's guilty on nothing. I don't see the RICO charge, but I do see the Mann Act charge. So my gut tells me, and I don't try to guess juries, but they're not going to all agree.
Let's break down what these charges actually mean. The central focus of the prosecution's case is sex trafficking. Prosecutors claim Diddy used his wealth and influence to coerce women into participating in drug-fueled, abusive sexual encounters with high-profile individuals.
Right out of the gate. Yeah. So there's going to be debate and, going over evidence and talking. So Monday goes in.
Remember, there are 28 days of testimony, and they're going to go over a lot of...
No, remember, in O.J. Simpson, there was 9 months, but they came in 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it really... It really just depends.
Including escorts. Multiple women have testified, with some saying they were manipulated and forced into participating in these parties, often under the influence of drugs. Another grave accusation is racketeering.
But I think Monday's going to bleed into Tuesday. And then, if you get into Wednesday, there's an issue.
Now things start tightening up.
Yeah, they're really up against the clock because Friday's July 4th, Thursday is July 3rd. Do they want to come in on Thursday?
Prosecutors argue that Diddy didn't just engage in these illicit activities on his own. He allegedly organized a criminal operation using his assistants, bodyguards, and other employees to facilitate these activities.
Well, Thursday the courts are closed.
Or do they want to get it done on Wednesday?
And not only that, there's a court holiday. So court is closed on July 3rd and 4th. That is Thursday and Friday. So what's the best way to get to consensus on Wednesday? The looming idea that you will be dragged into court through a skeletal staff that Judge Subramanian can say.
He is accused of running a criminal organization that operated in the shadows of his public empire. In a shocking revelation, prosecutors highlighted the incident involving rapper Kid Cudi's Porsche, which was destroyed in an arson attack allegedly orchestrated by Diddy's.
I'm going to open up just the jury room. I'm going to have a skeletal staff come in on a holiday, and you guys are going to continue deliberating. That's going to drive consensus in that jury room to say, hey, I got plans. I want to see some fireworks. You better all get on board.
You can listen to Derek and, based on his record, say, look, he's a doofus. But in this case, he's
Inner Circle. This wasn't just any random act of violence. It was tied to Diddy's supposed efforts to intimidate or silence anyone who posed a threat to his empire.
In this case,
it's true, but we don't say it out loud like that.
In this case, he is actually right that experientially, that when you have these 4-day holidays, it's shocking how many juries suddenly reach a consensus
Suddenly
right
I have
before.
clarity. You know what? The 28 days of testimony.
Prosecutors also presented evidence that Diddy's associates were involved in at least 2 instances of kidnapping, further adding weight to the charges. In today's dramatic closing arguments,
I've been seeing it crystal clear.
Well, not just that, but not just that. But you may have an 11-to-1 split or a 10-to-2 split on one of the counts. And those
pressure
two,
on those
and the
holdouts.
pressure on those two, they may have family picnics, they may have family parties, whatever. At a point, I know that sounds trivial and crazy.
Federal prosecutors delivered a power-packed presentation using visual aids and painstakingly detailed timelines. They laid out their case piece by piece, from drug trafficking to the destruction of property.
But there is that kind of
It's
inner
in the back
pressure.
of their head.
Yes,
It's definitely going to be, not even in the back of the head, maybe, toward the front of the head.
They don't want to have it linger over the holiday. They feel that pressure, and it happens
Now,
a lot.
Can I just say, on behalf of the jurors, they
meticulously explained how Diddy's empire allegedly fueled this dangerous underworld of violence and fear. The testimonies from victims were gut-wrenching. Women who once admired Diddy now stand in court, accusing him of subjecting them to unimaginable horrors. These emotional testimonies, paired,
I would hope, are taking this very seriously. And if it means that they have to come back on Monday, then so be it. If they don't get it done, they'll get it. All right, so they'll get a 3-day weekend instead of a 4-day weekend.
And
right?
they've already lost most of their summer. It's been beautiful days that they're walking out of court.
with the prosecution's powerful evidence, have painted a picture of a man who allegedly used his fame and fortune to exploit vulnerable women for his own pleasure and gain. One of the most significant charges is racketeering, also known as RICO.
Sun shining.
Dude, it's 110 in New York. Nobody wants to be outside.
28 days, 34 witnesses. They already went through Memorial Day. They're getting vertigo. They seem tired.
And the judge is not going to let them on Wednesday say, we're deadlocked, so just call a mistrial. The judge will say, you have to be hopelessly deadlocked. I'm not going to have a mistrial after 3 days of deliberations. I'm going to bring you back on Monday or bring you in on Thursday. So they're not going to be able to just get out of it.
Which puts all the more pressure on them.
This charge is particularly serious because it ties the accused to organized crime. The prosecution argues that Diddy didn't act alone. He was allegedly at the helm of a vast criminal enterprise that operated for years, coordinating illegal activities ranging from drug trafficking to arson and kidnapping. Of course, Diddy's defense team has a different story to tell.
To come up with a verdict before the holiday.
That's exactly right. They will have pressure to come to a verdict because Judge Subramanian is not going to let a mistrial happen after just 3 days.
Or they just come back on Monday and it goes on.
Hi, it's Nikita from Louisiana, and what an interesting turn of events. I think the 4th of July holiday will allow the case to speed up a bit. I feel like the jurors want to get out with their family and enjoy themselves for the weekend, so it'll be interesting to see how this all turns out in the end.
Yep, I mean, it's going to be...
Their strategy is clear. Deny, deny, deny. They argue that Diddy did not run a criminal organization and that the women involved were not trafficked. Instead, the defense claims these women were consensual partners who stayed with Diddy for years.
Fascinating. It will be fascinating. Okay.
To closing arguments about to begin in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking and racketeering trial, our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, is at the courthouse for us. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning to you, Michael. After weeks of graphic, often emotional testimony about sex, drugs, and violence, federal prosecutors are about to summarize their case against Sean Combs, hoping to convince a jury
that their testimonies were exaggerated or fabricated. The defense also focused heavily on attacking the credibility of the witnesses. They argue that the women who testified had their own motives for coming forward, including potential financial gain or revenge.
Of 8 men and 4 women ages 30 to 74, that one of hip-hop's most acclaimed figures coerced women into drug-addled sexual marathons with male escorts. Prosecutors also allege Combs used his assistants, his bodyguards, and other employees to carry out a pattern of criminal activity. They're pruning a few of the crimes that underpin the racketeering conspiracy charge, but the arson that destroyed Kid Cudi's Porsche is still included.
The defense tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, stating that the alleged crimes could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. In particular, the defense argues that the RICO charge is weak and that it is being used to exaggerate Diddy's involvement.
So is kidnapping, obstruction, and bribery. In their closing argument, expect defense attorneys to deny Combs led a sprawling criminal conspiracy as alleged. They're also expected to argue that his sexual partners were not trafficked, but willing girlfriends who stayed with him for years. Jury deliberations could begin as soon as tomorrow afternoon, more likely on Monday, guys.
They claim that while certain criminal activities occurred, there is no direct evidence linking Diddy to the planning or execution of these illegal acts. Diddy's empire, built over decades, is now in jeopardy. His name has been synonymous with success, luxury, and influence. But if the jury finds him guilty, it will mark a dramatic fall from grace.
And we know that you'll be right there, Aaron, for us. Thank you.
Closing arguments are underway as we speak in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Federal prosecutors wasted no time telling jurors that Combs allegedly used violence, power, fear, all to force several women into drug-fueled sex parties that sometimes lasted for days.
His accusers include 2 ex-girlfriends and a former assistant. Now, Combs is facing charges that include sex trafficking and racketeering. He's pleaded not guilty. He faces life in prison if he is convicted. NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Molas is outside the courthouse. So, Chloe.
Many, the idea that Diddy, one of hip-hop's most iconic figures, could be involved in such heinous acts is difficult to fathom. Diddy has shaped the music industry like few others. He discovered legendary artists, influenced fashion trends, and became a mogul in every sense of the word. But his personal life, and the actions alleged in this trial, could undo everything he's built.
This really comes down to the prosecutor's accusations and whether the jurors will buy it, that Combs ran a criminal enterprise. So what are prosecutors saying today in their closing arguments to convince the jury?
Hey there, guys. So the prosecutors, they have a PowerPoint presentation, essentially, and there's a big screen, and each of the jurors have one in front of them. And they basically broke it down with the 5 counts that he's facing, and they meticulously went through every single count.
The public's reaction to this trial has been a roar. Fans are torn between defending a man they once revered and confronting the disturbing allegations. Social media has exploded with opinions, memes, and debates. Some believe Diddy is the victim of a conspiracy, while others believe the evidence is irrefutable. Now all eyes are on the jury.
And how they feel as though they've proven that case with testimony and evidence over the last nearly 7 weeks. And the one thing that they mainly focused on this morning is racketeering. And remember, that is the one that carries the heaviest sentence. That's life in prison. And one of the things that they said at the beginning, the prosecutor, is that Combs was more powerful because of his inner circle, a group of people with a common purpose. And this is the enterprise, not to be confused with his business.
They have the power to decide whether Diddy will walk free or face decades behind bars. After weeks of testimony and evidence, the decision is now in their hands. If Diddy is convicted on all counts, he could face life in prison, a fate that would likely mark the end of his career and his legacy. However,
that was called Combs Enterprises. And this was all about how Combs knowingly had individuals working for him and had them carrying out illegal activity. So what is that illegal activity? Well, they have to prove 2 different crimes in order for him to be convicted of RICO. Drugs, transportation of drugs across state lines. We've heard individuals say that they did that for him.
If the jury finds reasonable doubt, he could walk free, but with the stigma of this trial following him for the rest of his life in this high-stakes legal battle. The outcome is uncertain, but the impact will be felt for years to come. Whether you see Diddy as a victim of a flawed system or as a criminal who abused his power.
Kidnapping. There were 3 different instances of kidnapping. Arson, that would be Kid Cudi's car, which was blown up with a Molotov cocktail, which prosecutors claim Diddy was behind that. But think about it this way. if the jury has to find him only guilty on 2 of those predicate crimes, it could be just 2 examples of trafficking drugs. That's it. And then the jury could convict him on RICO.
One thing is clear, this trial is about much more than just one man's fate. That wraps up our deep dive into Sean Diddy Combs' trial in the dark, secrets being exposed in court. Stay tuned as this case develops, and we'll bring you the latest updates. What do you think will happen to Diddy? Will he be convicted or walk free? Let us know in the comments below.
All right, our thanks to Chloe Malas, following every twist and turn from this case since the beginning just outside that courthouse. Chloe, thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.